Caitlin Clark became the first NCAA athlete in history to land a national State Farm campaign while still in college. Not the first female athlete, the first athlete, period. And when that commercial dropped, every marketing executive in America knew something massive had just shifted. Because State Farm didn't just sign a college basketball player, they bulldozed a 50-year-old rule that said female athletes couldn't sell products the way male athletes could. And Clark didn't just walk through that door, she kicked it completely off the hinges. Here's what nobody's talking about. The commercials you've been watching aren't just proof that Caitlin Clark has charisma. They're evidence of a systematic demolition. Clark didn't play by the marketing rules that kept women's sports invisible for decades. She destroyed them, one campaign at a time. State Farm, Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, 4 of the biggest brands in sports. And every single one of them had to throw out their playbook the second Clark showed up. Because the strategies that worked for male athletes for half a century, they didn't work anymore. Not after Clark proved what female athletes could actually do when given the same platform. Let's filter out the noise and focus on what actually happened here. Because the commercial success story you think you know, that's not the real story. The real story is about invisible barriers, billion-dollar hesitation, and one athlete who refused to accept that women's basketball couldn't command the same marketing power as men's. If you believe the story behind the story matters, smash that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. State Farm made history when they put Caitlin Clark in that first national commercial. But let's be real about what that actually means. For decades, insurance companies, car brands, and major retailers built their entire advertising strategy around male athletes. They believed, genuinely believed, that female athletes couldn't move products, that consumers wouldn't connect, that the return on investment wasn't there. This wasn't about talent. It was about assumptions. Assumptions so deeply embedded in sports marketing that nobody even questioned them anymore. State Farm had run athlete campaigns for years. Mahomes, Rodgers, Paul, all men, all proven, all safe. And then someone in that boardroom looked at Caitlin Clark's college numbers and said something that must have sounded insane at the time. What if we build a national campaign around her right now, while she's still in college, before she's proven anything in the pros? That's not how it's supposed to work. College athletes don't get national campaigns. Female college athletes definitely don't get national campaigns. The whole industry knew that. Except Clark didn't know that, or she knew it and didn't care. When she showed up on that State Farm set, she wasn't nervous, she wasn't tentative, she wasn't trying to prove she belonged there. She walked in like she'd been doing this her whole life. The chemistry with Jake was instant. The comedic timing was perfect. The delivery was natural. And when that commercial aired, something shifted. Because viewers didn't see a college athlete trying to sell insurance. They saw someone who could actually do this, someone who belonged in that space just as much as any male athlete ever had. Reading between the lines reveals something critical. State Farm took a massive risk. They bet on a college athlete with zero professional experience. They bet on a woman in a league that networks barely covered. They bet against 50 years of marketing data that said this wouldn't work. And when it worked, when that commercial became one of their most successful athlete campaigns ever, every other brand in America started asking the same question. What else have we been wrong about? That's when Nike called. And this is where it gets really interesting, because Nike had walked away from the Super Bowl for 27 years. 27 years. They decided the cost wasn't worth it anymore. They'd rather invest in digital campaigns and social media partnerships. The Super Bowl was too expensive, too risky, too unpredictable. And then they decided to come back after nearly 3 decades. And who did they choose to anchor their return? Not LeBron, not Mahomes, not any of the male superstars they'd built empires around. They chose Caitlin Clark. Think about that decision. Nike's first Super Bowl commercial in 27 years. One of the most expensive advertising slots in television history. Watched by over 100 million people, and they trusted a rookie WNBA player who hadn't played a single professional game yet to carry it. That's not just confidence. That's a complete rewrite of how sports marketing works, because Nike had data, decades of data, and all of that data said, you don't take that kind of risk on an unproven female athlete. You go safe. You go with someone who's already delivered. But here's what Nike understood that other brands were still figuring out. Clark wasn't unproven. She'd already proven something more valuable than championship rings. She'd proven she could change how people think about women's basketball. She'd proven she could draw crowds that rival men's games. She'd proven she could generate the kind of media attention that money can't buy. And most importantly, she'd proven she could make people care. That's what Nike needed for their Super Bowl return, not just star power, cultural power. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. The commercial game isn't about who plays the best. It's about who connects the best. And Clark connects in ways that male athletes rarely do. She doesn't have to project confidence. It's just there. She doesn't have to force charisma. It happens naturally. She knows when to be funny, when to be serious, when to let a moment breathe. That's director-level awareness. That's why brands aren't just signing her. They're rebuilding entire campaigns around her. Gatorade saw it too, and they didn't just sign her for a standard endorsement. They created a custom bottle tied to her actual training routine. They built the entire campaign around her story, her recovery process, her hydration strategy, not some generic athlete narrative, her specific approach to the game. The bottle sold out in days, not weeks. Days. Because fans didn't just want Gatorade, they wanted the Gatorade that connected them to Caitlin Clark's journey. Then, Wilson went nuclear. They announced their first ever female signature basketball collection, and Clark wasn't just the face. She was a co-creator. She designed elements of it, she tested it, she built it with them. This wasn't put your name on our product. This was help us build something that's never existed before. Wilson trusted a first-year professional to help design a product line that could define their brand for the next decade. That doesn't happen by accident. Here's what makes all of this absolutely wild. Every single one of these deals broke a precedent. State Farm had never featured a college athlete nationally. Nike had abandoned the Super Bowl for nearly 3 decades. Gatorade had never tied a product launch to an athlete's recovery routine instead of performance. Wilson had never created a female signature collection, 4 massive brands, 4 industry firsts, 1 athlete, and she wasn't even 25 years old yet. You were onto something when you noticed that Clark's commercials feel different than other athlete ads, because they are different. Most athlete commercials follow the same formula. Show the athlete being athletic, add dramatic music, insert product, say something inspirational. Done. Clark's commercials don't do that. They show her personality first. The basketball comes second. State Farm didn't sell insurance by showing her drain threes. They sold it by showing her dry humor and natural timing. Nike didn't sell shoes by showing her highlights. They sold them by showing her journey and her impact on the game. That's the genius nobody's talking about. Clark's commercial success isn't built on her basketball skills. It's built on her ability to be herself on camera. She doesn't perform charisma. She just exists with it. She doesn't force chemistry with co-stars. It just happens. She doesn't overthink her delivery. She trusts her instincts. That's director-level skill. That's why brands aren't just using her. They're building entire strategies around her. Let's talk about what this means for the industry, because we're watching a fundamental shift happen in real time. For 50 years, sports marketing worked one way. Male athletes were safe investments. Female athletes were risk investments. Male athletes could carry national campaigns. Female athletes could maybe get regional spots if their stats were exceptional. Male athletes commanded premium rates. Female athletes took what they could get. That was the system. Everyone accepted it. Nobody questioned it seriously enough to actually change anything. Then Clark showed up and the whole thing collapsed. State Farm's campaign with her outperformed their male athlete campaigns. Nike's Super Bowl return generated more buzz than their previous male-led spots. Gatorade's custom bottle sold faster than standard releases. Wilson's signature collection created a waiting list. The data that said female athletes couldn't sell? It was wrong, catastrophically wrong. And now every brand in America knows it. So what do you think is happening right now in marketing boardrooms across the country? They're asking themselves what other assumptions they've been wrong about. If Caitlin Clark can anchor a Super Bowl commercial, what else can female athletes do? If she can sell out a signature collection, who else can? If she can move products as effectively as male superstars, what other opportunities have we been missing? Those questions are worth billions. Because there's an entire generation of female athletes who've been told their whole lives that they'll never have the commercial opportunities that male athletes get. And Clark just proved that was a lie. Drop a comment right now if you think this changes everything for the next generation of female athletes, because connecting the dots reveals something massive. Clark isn't just building her own empire, she's building the blueprint for everyone who comes after her. Every brand deal she signs, every campaign she leads, every barrier she breaks, it creates space for the next athlete to do even more. That's legacy-level impact. That's bigger than basketball. Here's where it gets really interesting moving forward. Clark has proven she can sell insurance, athletic wear, hydration products, and sports equipment, four completely different categories, four completely successful campaigns. That versatility is worth its weight in gold. Because brands don't just want athletes who can sell their specific product. They want athletes who can cross categories, athletes who can build cultural moments instead of just advertising moments. And Clark's already done that multiple times, which means the next wave of opportunities isn't going to be more sportswear deals. It's going to be categories that have never seriously considered female athletes before. Tech companies, streaming platforms, luxury brands, financial services, lifestyle products. These are billion-dollar industries that have built their entire marketing strategy around male celebrities and male athletes. And they're watching what Clark is doing with absolute fascination, because if she can make people care about insurance and sports drinks, she can make them care about basically anything. We're getting into speculation territory, but multiple sources in the marketing world are whispering about major non-sports brands circling Apple, Amazon, Netflix. These aren't rumors from fan accounts. These are conversations happening at the executive level, because Clark has something these brands desperately need. She has authenticity. She has cultural relevance. She has the ability to make advertising feel like storytelling instead of selling. That's the holy grail of modern marketing. And she's already mastered it at 23 years old. Think about what happens if even one of those deals materializes. If Clark becomes the face of a streaming documentary series, if she partners with a tech company on a product launch, if she leads a financial literacy campaign, each one of those would be another industry first, another barrier destroyed, another proof point that female athletes can do everything male athletes do and often do it better. The commercial empire she's building isn't just about her success, it's about completely rewriting what's possible. Here's the bottom line. Caitlin Clark didn't just master the commercial game, she changed the entire rulebook. She forced billion-dollar brands to admit they'd been wrong about female athletes for decades. She proved that charisma and commercial value aren't gendered. She demolished barriers that kept an entire generation of athletes invisible. And she did it all before her 25th birthday. That's not just genius. That's revolutionary. So before you click away, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on, because we're tracking every move in Clark's marketing empire and the doors it's opening for women's sports. Next up, we're breaking down which brand is most likely to sign her next and why that deal could completely change the endorsement game forever. You're not going to want to miss that. This is just the beginning of a complete industry transformation, and we're documenting every second of it.